When you became pregnant, were there things that you knew you were either going to do exactly like your parents or completely differently? My guest, Alida, carried this with her throughout her pregnancy journey and her breastfeeding journey. And she talks about the ways that this impacted her, both throughout her pregnancy, her delivery, and for a long time throughout her postpartum years and beyond. She has so much wisdom to bring to this conversation and has thought so much about how this impacted her throughout her breastfeeding years. And now this is the kind of work that she does for other people to help impact them for good in the world. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Alida from Peru as much as I did, as she brings both this perspective of her own reflections of processing her own breastfeeding journey, but also her cultural reflections about the differences in breastfeeding where she grew up and now where she lives here in Massachusetts. But before we get into her story, I just want to remind you that if you want to feel more confident about your breastfeeding journey, then right now, go to my website, www.quabbinbirthservices.com, so that you can worry less, enjoy your baby more. All you have to do is reach out to me, and we can get you on the path to feeling better about breastfeeding. No matter what your baby feeding choices are, we can help you get there. I can't wait to see your name pop up in my inbox. See you soon. When I began breastfeeding, I was blindsided by how difficult it was. Having known only a handful of people who had ever done it and only seeing it up close a couple of times, I had a huge learning curve. Since then, I've become a doula, a childbirth educator, and an internationally board-certified lactation consultant, or an IBCLC. I'm your host, Lo Nigrosh, and I welcome you to the Milk Making Minutes, where we explore the systemic, medical, and cultural barriers that make feeding our babies so difficult, so that you know your baby feeding struggles are not your fault, and your triumphs really are the miracles you feel they are. Hi, Alida. Welcome to the Milk Making Minutes. I'm so glad you're here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So before we start talking about baby feeding, introduce yourself and your family.
I'm Alida. I was born in Peru. I have one daughter. I live here in Massachusetts since 2018. The beginning years of my motherhood were in Peru with a different tradition, I think, that I see here in America. So I wanted to share with you today some of that.
Yeah, I'm so excited to hear it. Take us back to kind of your childhood. I always like to talk about what people noticed as they were growing up in terms of baby feeding. What do you remember in terms of your cultural upbringing? Did you see people feeding babies from their bodies frequently? Was that a part of your cultural upbringing? What was the norm?
When I was a child, it was like no formula. Like, I think that it didn't even exist. I was born in 1982. So from what I do remember, my both grandmothers, they will just nurse. One grandmother had 12 kids and she will
Wow.
nurse and had a home birth. And my other grandmother, she had 4 girls and she will nurse them. When I was born, and I think that that's what precondition the type of motherhood that I had, is like my mom, she had a cesarean. And her doctor, she will tell me that every time that she will go to her doctor, he will say like, you have this and you won't be able to nurse your baby. So she didn't nurse me. And when I became a mother, since I was pregnant, I was like, I'm going to do this in my soul, right? In my subconscious. I was like, I'm going to do this the opposite. I will nurse and I will basically control everything related to my motherhood because I know better. And you know what happens even now? Like, I work with indigenous communities in a very rural area in Peru, and you give birth in your hut, right? Who's going to give you formula? And that's, I think that is stuck on your subconscious, on the subconscious level, because you don't have any other possibility. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's the way that it's supposed to be, right? Because they won't be able to afford it, or that's what they've seen their whole life. But in Lima, that is the capital city, things are more like European or more modern. People
Mm-hmm.
who can afford more things live in Lima.
Right. Okay. So when you grew up, were you in a rural area or were you more in
I
a city?
I was in city, but the
Okay.
good thing is that I was like, when I was born, my parents were living with one of my grandmothers, and I didn't see my mom for 2 months because when she gave birth to me during the cesarean, they left a cotton ball on her. So she got like an infection. And the picture that I have when the baby's leaving the hospital, so it's me with my father who didn't know what to do with the baby. So basically, those first 2 months, my grandmother was like doing the job for my mom.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I think that is also part of a lot of now of the things that I do for living is like the abandonment, like not
Mm-hmm.
because she wanted, it's just like the perspective from the baby, right? But she never nursed me.
Mm-hmm. Did they know why she was so sick in the beginning? Or
So this is so funny because the director of that hospital, so that top head of that hospital, was my godmother.
oh my goodness.
So they took me. They did the cesarean. That day, I wasn't supposed to be born that day, but actually my soul decided. There was an earthquake that day, so my mom stood up, and then she started having the contractions. And because the doctor already said like, this is a pregnancy that is not very healthy for you and all the things, so they did a cesarean. And they didn't know what was happening, but my mom was having fever and fever and fever. And then they realize once like something is wrong with this woman. And then let's cut open again just to check what's going on. Oh, a cotton ball. Oh, and that's what it got like stuck on my soul. I think I always wish that my mom would have nursed me, like me. Like even when I was a teenager, not like you are old enough. Like I was like,
Wow.
I wish that my mom, because I felt that that I miss something.
Huh. Most adolescents don't really think about that, at least here. I don't know if it's different where you grew up in your cultural upbringing, but I would say here, if you asked any adolescent, did your mom breastfeed you or nurse you? Breastfeed you or feed you formula. I don't even know if they could answer the question. Maybe they could, but that's so, unless they have some sort of family history like adoption or something. But that's very interesting that you felt that piece was missing.
And I feel it now that I'm talking to you. Like I know where it is, like because I've been
Mm,
working on that, right?
mm-hmm,
And I do remember when I was like 11 or 12, like I always have been like kind of petite, right?
mm-hmm,
And my mom will say to me, but I think that my mom had something, of course, like you don't want to give birth and then get sick, right? You want to be with your baby. So she had something too. When I was 11, 12, she will say like, you will need to start wearing a bra. But I didn't have anything. Up until now, my breasts are
mm-hmm,
very tiny. And she will buy me this like, it was like cartons from the milk or something like this bras. And I will
mm-hmm,
cry and say like, no, I don't want to wear it. And she was like, you won't be able to give milk to your baby because they are going to fall like mine. You know how it was like.
mm-hmm,
And my grandmother will say like, no, because you will take these two herbs and then you are
mm-hmm,
going to have a lot of milk. So you don't worry about that. And then I had
mm-hmm,
the other story from my grandmother, right? Like making sure that I know, like, you don't worry, like, you will have milk.
mm. Wow, that's so interesting that it was something that you discussed with both your grandmother and your mother frequently, and kind of we hear the angel and I don't want to refer to your mom as a devil, but like
Yeah.
the two pieces of advice that were conflicting and causing both worry and reassurance in your own mind about what your journey would be for feeding babies. Yeah, and I wanted to ask you, I know this is about your story, but when you talk about people who are in rural areas who don't have they don't have a substitute, they don't have a milk substitute. If so the only option is their own human milk. Do you ever see allo mothers where if somebody is struggling with feeding their baby, somebody else is feeding the baby, or do you just very infrequently see a struggle with feeding a baby?
This is very, very interesting because when my mom came back after those 2 months, the neighbor 2 doors away from us, she had a baby. So I'm March 30th and the baby was March 19th. So she
Mm.
will bring me to her and she will nurse me. But this is
Mm.
very common in rural areas. Like
Mm-hmm.
basically in the beginning, the first 5 days after you gave birth and you are healing, like your body, sometimes if you want to rest more, because everything is a community, and that's the other thing, like there is a lot of sense of community. So you will take, I'm going to take your baby so Patty can nurse her for 1 hour, then I'll bring her back, so you don't do this run of feeding.
Mm-hmm.
So I've seen that is common. It's used to be more common, but in my time it was common.
Yeah, that's great. This is really common in the anthropological research as well, that there were many caregivers of the baby. And so then the primary mother felt way more rested, not as frazzled as many of us feel, because we are the only person sustaining this baby. And so there was a lot more rest in the postpartum period than there is now.
But I think that this is the society, right? Like this is
Mm-hmm.
like a problem with society. Like
Right.
I don't know. I feel that if I will say like, "Lo, I can nurse your baby," and we are in the mall, and someone sees me doing that, and she will say like, "This woman is crazy,"
Mm-hmm. Right.
and it's just something that is so natural, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yet
then I
we
go,
give lots of milk from another creature all the time, from a totally different species, a cow or a goat.
yeah, yeah. So when
Mm-hmm.
I gave birth in my house, I
Mm-hmm.
had a dog. She will immediately, I gave birth, and she will go and sit next to the baby and she will start having milk. It will be dripping her milk.
No way.
And you know what? Every time I had like a mastitis during these 4 years that I
Uh,
breastfed,
uh-huh.
she will have the mastitis with me on the same right breast.
No way. That is incredible.
And then when she was dripping milk, because I was so tired, at one point, like I will see, because I was living in the city, so I could see in an apartment building, like this tall apartment building, so I can see the lights from my window from all the apartments building turn off because they will go to sleep. And I was like, when am I going to sleep? And I was on my
Yeah.
job, and she will be dripping milk, and I was like, she's trying to say like, I have some milk for this baby.
Right.
I was like,
Yeah. I'll help you.
yeah,
Wow, that's incredible. What a great story.
yeah.
Thank you so much for giving all of that really rich cultural and family history about baby feeding. So then, when you became pregnant, what kind of preparation did you do in hopes of controlling your experience as you were thinking about baby feeding?
My husband and I, we have been doing plant medicine retreats since 2000, officially, legally. Let's say when I opened my registration legally in Peru, it was 2009. Plant medicine
Mm-hmm.
retreats in the Amazon rainforest. So my husband will fly back and forth to do those retreats. While I was telling Carlos, I want to get pregnant, but he was flying so much that I was like, you know. So he will start telling me like, I see this baby. She just looks like you in every ceremony. And I will ask her, what is your name? And she will say like, mm-mm. And I will see her with a baby boy that he looks like me because my husband is like white skin, blonde. But I knew, but she told me that she will come in soon. So that was July 2013. And then he did a dieta, we call it a diet with a plant, in November. And I know when I got pregnant, it was December 13th. I got pregnant on December 13th. And you know what, Lo? Like, I knew that I was pregnant like in January. I knew it. And I would like start like when I dream and I do remember things. So I would like start dreaming about my grandmothers, what they will say, like, you don't know worry when you give birth. You just put a big bag of rice, like 3 bags of rice. You will give birth at nighttime and put a few alpaca wools, and you just sit and the baby will be born. And then you start like doing your little things, in the house. So I knew that. And we knew exactly the day that she will be born. So I started doing Kundalini yoga with my doula, and I told her on September 20th, I'm going to break my water at midnight. And she's like, call me anytime. And I was like, okay. So my husband flew back from the Amazon on September 18th. And on September 20th, I was sleeping, and 12:19 in the morning, I broke my water.
Wow.
But my doula never showed up. And she never showed up, but I love that part of the story because that night, her son, who was 5 years old, asked her, can I sleep on your bed? And he turned off her cell phone. So my midwife, one of the midwives, she arrived at 4 in the morning, and I said, I was okay. Like, I was like, no pain, like, just in a trance, I think. And at 5:30, I told her, I think I need to push. She was like, oh, that's the baby. The baby was born at 7 in the morning. It was like a plant medicine ceremony. Then I don't want to say the name of the plant medicine because it's illegal in the United States, but it was like a plant medicine ceremony. Like I was in a trance. I put the baby, I made her crawl a little bit, and she started nursing. And for me, she opened, like this motherhood opened a portal for me because I can start seeing things. If I will say that I will do it again, I think that the mistake that I made, it was like I was so focused on doing it so different from the way that my mom did because my ego was so high, right? I haven't accepted my mom's motherhood. You did it wrong from my perspective, from my narrative, and I'm going to do it right. It was so much weight on me that I would not stop like carrying her. I was like, if I'm not going to sleep ever, I don't care. I will have I don't know the name of this one when you carry the babies this way and this get inflamed. That no,
Carpal tunnel?
yeah, on both hands. It was like I was making that right on the way that I was like, but my husband needed to fly back to the Amazon, and I will stay by myself. And it was very challenging for me. It was beautiful. Like I had so much milk, and I remember my mom saying to me, without wanting to hurt me, but she will say like, you won't have milk because your breasts are so small. And I will say like, I will have tons of milk. And I did. I had too much milk, in fact.
Yeah. This is a myth that gets passed along. Breast milk production has nothing to do with the size of the breast tissue. You probably know by now that my number one goal is to reduce stress in the perinatal period. So I am so pleased to announce my new partnership with Feast and Fettle, which is a locally prepared home delivery meal service. I was able to select from a list of delicious meal options that got delivered right to my front door for the entire week. Some of the options I chose were zucchini lasagna, roasted carrots, some challah bread, some pork fried rice. Those are just a few of the choices that we had that we devoured. I highly recommend this service as one way to just get one more thing off your plate so that you can spend more time focusing on your family and less time worrying about all the things that you need to do. Just go to feastandfettle.com, which will be linked in the show notes. And if you use my code MILK, MILK, you can get $30 off your first week. Let Feast and Fettle do the cooking for you. That's so interesting that you talk about this idea of your mother's motherhood journey being wrong and you needing to do it right. I can so relate to that. And in some ways, I needed to break the intergenerational trauma chains, But in other ways, as I've been a parent for almost 10 years, I've had to realize that my parents have a lot of wisdom to pass along, even as I choose to do some things differently. That there's a balance there.
Yes, and but you know what I feel that once, because for me it was like the baby was born and I put her, I have the picture with towels on my left breast, and it was like wow, like so many sensations, like. But at that moment, I think that what happens from my perspective is that you are facing the motherhood from all the mothers that were before you, and now you are putting it there on your own baby, right? And you decide
Mm.
the way that you want to do it, right? But I was so focused on my mom did it all wrong because I miss so much this nursing. Like I wanted to be nurse. I wanted to move my mouth. Like for real, I still remember. It created on me, and that's what I was about to say. Like some people think that they fail nursing in the nursing process because they didn't have milk, but you can also feel like you fail even when you had a lot of milk. That is what happened to me. At one point I felt like I'm failing. I have so much milk. I will donate to the hospitals in Peru like 40 ounces, like so much milk. But I was failing because I was so overloaded, right? I think that the nursing journey you can see it from different ways, right? It's a journey so particular for every single person because you come with so different from a different baggage, emotional baggage, ancestral baggage. I nursed up until Zoe. I do remember we came here for Christmas. So it was 2017, December. And I told her, I said, like, look, because she was almost 4. So I said, like,
Mm-hmm.
look, I cannot not nurse you anymore because I feel that I don't sleep anything. I was scared about that to say like
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do it and create the abandonment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember being on the in that plane on our 16 hours journey, and she was like, "Okay, mommy, you don't have to nurse me anymore."
Wow. And you were expecting a different response from her.
At that point, I was so tired because the thing is like she will wake up every cycle of this her sleep. Usually it was 40 between 40 and 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't nurse her while I was laying down. I need to pick her up because
Oh,
she will
wow.
cry. So I did that for 4 years, almost 4
Oh
years.
my gosh.
So my brain, I was tired. But then you know
Mm-hmm.
what, when she said that, I kind of felt good because I felt that I wasn't creating any abandonment issue on her.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then she said something. She's like, I'm going to start sucking my thumb. She said this to me on the airport. I'm going to start sucking my thumb because I'm going to think that it's your nipple. But then at one point, when I get older, I will stop.
Wow.
I was like, okay. And I don't nurse her on that plane.
Was that the last time?
That was the last time.
Wow. What a story. A lot of people have brought up this idea of being an overproducer and sometimes we get into why that was or what was happening, but I would love to kind of sit with this idea of the feeling of failure still being associated with producing so much milk. Have you processed it all, where you think that came from or why you were feeling like you were failing
Yeah.
even though you were producing so much milk? Because I think anyone who has experienced underproduction might have a hard time understanding that. But people who have experienced overproduction, I think, can relate to that feeling of, oh my gosh, I'm so tired of having to deal with all this milk all the time.
So, from my understanding, this area on your right, because it was the right, and I know exactly which duck was the one who was creating, I was having so much milk that if I wouldn't pump, in between those 45 minutes, my breasts will be so big that they will hurt. And sometimes I needed to sleep, so I will fall asleep. So by the time that she will wake up, it was like it was like shooting milk all over. So that's one thing. The other thing is like I was overdoing things. I was overproduct. The overproduction of milk, it's related from my perspective to that. Also, the right side of your body represents usually your present issues, what happened in your childhood on this present life, right? But this area on your chest, this area here, from my perspective again, represents your father, right? And I had so many issues with my father while growing up. So I think that it was connected to a lot of things, but that not sleeping and then having a mastitis because I didn't pump in between those that hour. Of course, you pump more or she nurse more and you produce more. So for me, it was like, what was the solution, right? It's supposed to don't say this, but if I will do it different in that aspect, I will do it. I will create a different setting on my mind to don't overproduce. But also, I help a lot of kids.
Some people just are milky. I like to call those people kind of milky people, but also it's kind of a give and take, right? Like we can ramp it up and we can slow it down. And so, what were those? Probably because you had this fear instilled in you that you wouldn't produce milk. I'm going to make an assumption that you really worked hard in the beginning to ramp up your milk supply. And then maybe you were scared to ever
Stop.
stop. Right.
So I wasn't doing anything. I think that everything was in the subconscious level. That
Mm,
my beliefs, my narrative, the narrative that I have created since probably I was in my mom's belly, right? Since when she gave birth to me. So that was the key, and that's what I think that is the key for most people. Being honest, on that when you experience your nursing journey or the motherhood, is that reflection because you spend those 9 months with your mother, right? So you are that copy paste, right? You're the copy paste of your mother and how your mother felt while she was carrying you. How did she feel when she gave birth to you? And I think that my mom felt so much guilt that I was carrying with me as well. I think that it was very emotional, very like energetic level for me to overproduce. I don't remember, and this is funny because I had so much milk, and my husband he wears glasses. So one day on this break that I had like 40 minutes while she will sleep, I will go grab a snack, something. And I went to his office and said, like, I'm so tired. And he turned and he said, like, but you didn't get any sleep? It's been like 2 years and a half. So I opened my breast and I had so much milk because I needed to pump again. And I just shoot him on the eye.
uh-huh.
And he was like, and I was like, no, because I need to pump for this. I need to pump again. Right.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But my grandmother will say, if you had a bad feeling or a bad emotion before you nurse, you release that milk for 3 minutes and then you nurse the baby. So the
Mm-hmm.
emotion will be gone with the milk. So
Mm.
you don't pass it to the baby. So I was also doing that. So I think that it was like a lot of
Overstimulating.
stimulation. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And even that nursing every 40 minutes, that's stimulating a lot. And then the pumping in between to get relief was stimulating a lot. So it sounds like there was a lot of stimulation in addition to the energy that was contributing to the milk supply.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What were the treatments that you did for mastitis relief?
I did homeopathy. So I will do phytolaca. It will help me. I will do cabbage leaves
Mm-hmm.
and I will do a lot of massage because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
when you massage. One day I did castor oil, but I think that because it's so thick, even if I rinse it out, like she felt the castor oil and I didn't want to give her a baby a castor oil, right? Like an
Mm-hmm.
infused. milk with castor oil. So yeah, that's what I did basically.
And how long would it take to clear up?
I had like 8, I remember, like these problems on the same breast, all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But there were 2 that they clear up in. It took longer, like 2 or 3 days, and the other ones
Mm-hmm.
were easy because I
Okay.
would catch them. Like I would feel like I could notice a different sensation, so I will know. But I remember
Mm-hmm.
that the first one that lasted longer,
Mm-hmm.
I was so tired, and I knew that I was feeling this thick part of my breast, but I was so tired. I was like, I don't care. I need to sleep. And I went to sleep, and I knew that I would wake up with this thing on my breast, but I was just so tired.
Was there a reason you weren't able to nurse lying down? Did you ever figure that out?
No, I don't know. And you remember that, like, when they are like 2 or 3, they can talk, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
will tell her, like, look, tonight when you wake up, I want you to lay down and you just grab my boob and go back to sleep. And she will cry. But I think that because it was so long, right? Like it was like 2 or 3 years that she understood, but on her when she's sleepy, like she wanted to be carried.
That's a long time to always nurse sitting up and to nurse so frequently and never. I do talk to a lot of people who have to nurse frequently throughout the night, but they usually are able to sleep while nursing. But to have to sit up,
Yeah.
put the baby on the breast, wait till they're done, get them settled back down, and then go back to sleep yourself, that's missing out on a lot of sleep night after
But
night.
but I have to say something. So it was like she was like 6 months or something, and
Uh-huh.
literally I was just living in my bedroom, like because in between the 45 minutes, like what am I gonna do?
Mhm.
So I bought a formula, like a formula
Mhm.
in the store, and I asked my husband. I said he was back home, and I said like, can you try to give her that? I felt me myself at that point because I had so much emotions related to nursing. I said, like, can you do that? Try to use a bottle for her. So she drank like half of an ounce. But that
Mhm.
day she had so much gas.
Mm.
So I was like, I almost killed a baby. So I was like, so
Mm.
so much drama. Uh,
Uh-huh.
when she was 5 months old or something like that. So I'm a lawyer in Peru. And
Mhm.
when I gave birth, I was working in the mining department of Peru. So I would work from 8 to 3 p.m.
Mm.
I was freaking out. I was like, oh my gosh, I left so much milk for the baby, but she didn't want to grab a bottle. Guess what? It was like I needed to quit. It was like 2 weeks. And she would just drink 1 or 2 ounces of these big bottles that I would leave for her. And she would wait for me. I would get home 4:15. She would wake up from her nap and she would just nurse and nurse and nurse. And I was feeling like, is this worth it for me, like not being able to work because I'm thinking about the baby, but the baby not drinking milk?
Mm.
I quit.
Mm. So when did you go back to work? At what? How old was she?
She was 4 months and 3 weeks, 4 months and 2 weeks.
Okay.
And it's the best thing that I have ever done.
Mhm.
For real. It was so much stress on that job. Like my boss, by law, I supposed to be able to pump.
Mhm.
She will make meetings and I couldn't pump.
Mm. Who was caring for her while you were at work?
So we hire a babysitter. So I put the cameras. But I felt like, and I'm okay with babysitters, like,
Mm.
you know, but I felt that I couldn't live my life fully in another. Like I would have my cell phone like this and pumping,
Mm.
not doing anything else at my job, like piles and
Mhm.
piles of documents.
Yeah, and you did feel better once you quit?
Yes,
You were okay.
yes, I did. I did because I was home with her, right? So I won't miss anything. I won't like those things, right?
And did she nurse as frequently? Did she nurse in 40-minute increments all day and all night, or was it mostly at night that it was 40 minutes and during the day it was longer
It was
stretches?
mostly at nighttime. It was at nighttime. In the day, she will take a nap of 2 hours. But sometimes I didn't want to sleep. So people say like, you sleep with the baby. I'm like, no, I want to do something else,
Right. I'm a grown up.
Yeah.
I want to do some grown up things.
Yeah. And then it like complicated. It's not because of her, but it was a situation. I think complicated things with my husband. He was gone a lot of time. When he would come back, he wasn't able to help me at nighttime, right? What we used to do is like at 7 p.m. she will go to sleep at 7:30. If you were holding her, she will make sometimes a stretch of 2 hours on the first. So I would say like, can you hold her so I sleep here just for this hour and a half or 2 hours? Sometimes we were doing that.
Yeah, I remember that too with my first. Yeah. Just let me sleep for 2 hours.
Yeah.
Don't move.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard.
But you know what it was interesting as well is like, so I stopped nursing in January 2018. But up until now, I still have a little bit of milk from the same breast.
From that right side.
Yeah. In this February or something, I was talking to someone who she was pregnant, and she said something like nursing. And you remember when you feel your boobs like, I was like, oh my God, I think that but it's that I still think that I have some layers to work on that. But I bet if now I put the pump or something, I will have milk. Like
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah. I don't doubt it. Some people keep milk for many, many, many years.
But the other thing is like, I remember, so when I had my first period, my grandma will know. You weren't bleeding, but she will know somehow that your period was coming, right? And she will do some stuff like pelvic steam. She will do some stuff, different stuff like put the pictures of the great grandmother to say thank you, those things. But I don't remember when I hit like 14 or 15 and my mom was like bothering me more about wearing the bra thing. She will say like, I'm going to give you these herbs now so you will know that you will have milk when you get older, when you have your baby. So she was like, give me like once a month or every 2 weeks, something like that for a period of time. She was like, they are going to stay with you and then you will have milk.
What were the herbs?
One of them was maca. And I know that here there is kind of a conflict in the United States that people should not drink maca because I have read it when you are nursing. But that's key in Peru to drink. So basically the nursing potion is maca, quinoa, like you boil them, quinoa, oat milk. I think that is fennel here. I don't know if the name is fennel. But my grandmother will give me this while I was 16 or 15, and she will wrap these herbs. I think that I don't remember the name of the herbs on my womb with oil. And she's like, don't worry. When you are going to have your baby, you are going to have milk. And I was like, okay, thank you. And when I gave birth to my baby, it was 7 in the morning. So at 8 p.m., I was tired, right? I needed to sleep. And the baby was sleeping. I bought a crib thinking that she will ever sleep on a crib.
I know.
I lay down on the feet on my bed so I can see her. So I closed my eyes and I'm telling you, I opened my eyes. My eyes were open and I saw my grandmother and my aunt. My aunt was next to the baby. So I was like, hi. And they were like this. And I remember saying this. I was like, can you watch the baby the whole night because I haven't got any sleep and I really need to sleep?
They kind of like signaled that they were watching.
And I remember, and I was like, why am I going to see the most important people in my whole life, right?
Oh.
Now that I just gave birth. Well, they didn't see the baby. They didn't watch the baby for the whole night. But,
of course not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, what a
So
sweet story.
those herbs are like maca, the quinoa, and the oatmeal. And people will think that it sounds like it's not very good, but it tastes good.
Yeah, I love hearing the herbs and the foods that people from different places around the world recommend during the perinatal period because it varies from place to place. I find it so beautiful. And we've kind of lost this tradition in the US. I'm sure that there were, now we have oatmeal. That's the one thing that people recommend, or blue Gatorade, which is kind of a weird one. These foods are important, and it's so beautiful that there are places around the world where there are specific foods during the perinatal period that women should eat to nourish themselves. And for me, it's all about taking care of the person who is nourishing the baby and making sure that they are well nourished and feeling cared for so that they can give energy and nourishment to the baby. I
Yeah.
think it's beautiful.
Yeah. I think that working with herbs and traditional uh, uses of different plants or food, like just give you, at least for me, give me confidence and say like, oh, I know what she's doing. I will get that. When you have
Yeah.
confidence, you believe something.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it will happen.
Absolutely. Okay, so I think that's a great segue for us to talk about the work that you do for families.
I've been working with family constellations, that is basic ancestral healing, and being aware on a session of what are the old patterns that we are carrying from different members on your family tree. You can connect with someone somehow by the name, repeating the story, because you were born on the same birthday, you have the same birthday, you share the same jobs, the same profession. So they are different ways. And then but everything begins with the mother, with your mother. And so that's the work that I do. I offer also quantum healing uh, regressions, past life regressions, because then you can see things like very interesting from your past life. And I do biomagnetism. So I work with magnets and the polarities to balance the pH in the different parts of the body.
Amazing. I got to be in a women's wellness retreat with you where you worked with a whole group of people doing just a tiny amount of family constellation work. It was really beautiful, the work that you were doing, just having people think about their mother and their father and where they were and how they related to them currently, right now, and the energy that they brought to them right now in the space. And it was just a tiny glimpse into the work that you do. But I know that we carry these people with us and that it impacts how we parent and how we live our lives. And so I know that the work that you offer people can really give a lot of insight into how they're living their lives and going about just their everyday moments. So
Thank
thank
you.
you for doing that work and helping people kind of understand themselves and their families better.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for sharing this beautiful story. I love hearing about your family and the traditions from Peru that you've brought, and also just this interesting tie between the work that you do and how and the insight that brings you into your milk production and your insights into how you think that has impacted your milk making story in general. I really appreciate you taking the time to share.
Thank you for inviting me. Like, this was like, I shared in one magazine in Peru at that time my journey as a mother, but to do it here in Massachusetts, like, it's very meaningful for me. Thank you.
You're welcome. I met Alida at a women's wellness event here locally in my hometown where she did some of her family constellations work for a group of us. And it was really powerful. And I knew that she was someone who I would love to have on the podcast if she was willing to share her own breastfeeding stories. And luckily she was. So I feel so happy that she came on to share her perspectives of what it was like for her and how she has learned from this experience and grown as both a person and a parent. All of her information is linked in the show notes. And of course, if you want to try out Feast and Fettle, which Oh my gosh, I've been so blown away by their food. We had the most delicious beef and broccoli that my husband is still raving about. That's linked in the show notes as well. You can use my code for $30 off, MILK. And if you heard Alida's story and you would like to talk about any of the inequities you heard about or the cultural differences that you listened to, and you're thinking, man, I wish there were a group of professionals and like-minded baby feeding parents that I could chat to about this, head over to my Milk Making Minutes community group on Facebook right now. And you can get that discussion started because there are so many interesting themes in this episode that many of us struggle with. I can't wait to see you there. Bye.